What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the Scroll Cup. The Scroll Cup is a brand new Great League format. It is a brand new meta. It includes water, dark, and fighting type Pokemon only. So we're first going to look at the top meta rankings on PvPoke, and then we're going to look at 11 top teams that I've created for this league. And yeah, let's just get right into it. So right away, we see Toxapex at the top. It makes sense. It resists the fighting. It's a water type that's really bulky. It is the only thing that beats Azumarill in the format, which is basically one of the only Pokemon that gets in as a fairy because of its sub-water typing. That being said, I should mention that Primarina is banned in this cup. They have banned it from this cup, which is also a water fairy, but it uses charm, so it kind of makes sense why it's banned. Second Pokemon, we've got Sableye, the non-shadow, actually running its new buff Dazzling Gleam, as well as the reworked Foul Play, which is really cool. And then we see Morpeko, and Morpeko is really good because it beats both of those top two Pokemon, resisting the Shadow Claws and the Foul Plays, and then hitting super effective with the Thundershock and Aura Wheel on Toxapex. So makes sense why that would be third there. And then we've got Gastrodon as a Mud Slapper, just pretty strong into both Morpeko and Toxapex. So you can kind of see where this meta is going. Mandibuzz, bulky, Annihilape, hit super effective on the darks while resisting the poison. Chesnaught as a grass. And then you've got Azumarill, Guzzlord, Shadow Glade, which is a pretty interesting one. Guzzlord is also cool because it resists all the elemental typings, but it is double weak to fairy if you run into any of those, and it is weak to fighting. So then you've got Lantern at 13, making a little bit of a comeback. Komao, same thing, dragon, but not weak to the fighting, but it does pick up a psychic weakness, and there is quite a bit of psychic in this meta, surprisingly. And then we've got Quagsire, Jellicent, which just walls Toxapex and is good against the fighters. And then you've got Malamar, which is your psychic and dark. You've got a poison dark in Skuntank, higher than Drapion actually. And then Whiscash and Spiritomb. Spiritomb kind of fitting that same niche as Sableye, just with not as great coverage. So yeah, let's take a look at some top teams. So the first team I've got right away obviously has to include Toxapex. It is the #1 ranked Pokemon for a reason, although it doesn't sim like it. In the ones, it doesn't look absolutely amazing, but this is a Pokemon you want to really use in the zeros. It's just such a strong Pokemon. It's so bulky, so using it there. And then what are we covering? It's a electric and ground weaknesses with a grass in the back in Shiftry. It is a Razor Leafer, which is also dark, which resists Psychic, which Toxapex is also weak to. So Shiftry and Toxapex make a nearly perfect core. This is a pseudo fast move damage team because you have a lot of fast move pressure with Poison Jab, Razor Leaf, and Dragon Tail, but it might not look it right away to your opponent. So maybe a bit of strength there. And then Guzzlord just has a kind of a neutral safe swap, resisting the elementals, and creates a decent core with Toxapex because if you do somehow run into a fairy, then you've got Toxapex to punish that on the lead. The next team we have is Chesnaught, basically double Sableye, double Dark Ghost in the back. And this team is pretty straightforward. You're weak to poison on the front. You've got 2 answers to poison in the back. And then Sableye and Spiritomb sim unbelievably well. They're also good against the ghosts, which Chesnaught wouldn't do great against if they're not like a water ghost. This team is triple weak to fairy, but that being said, the only fairy in this format really is Azumarill. And Azumarill obviously is going to take super effective damage from the Vine Whips and the Frenzy Plants to the point where you actually win that matchup pretty hard. So yeah, you just would stay in the lead against that Pokemon. The next team we're taking a look at is Mantine, Morpeko, and Gastrodon. Gastrodon looks like an absolute beast. Mantine creates a really great core with it. and then Morpeko as a safe swap. If you are going to run Morpeko as a safe swap, there is an argument to be made that you could run Seed Bomb on it, especially because one of the most common answers is going to be that Gastrodon. You could also run Outrage on it if you are finding a lot of Guzzlords. So this Pokemon does have a lot of play. The next team we're going to look at is Mandibuzz Double Dark Poison. Both Skuntank and Drapion are just neutrally very strong into everything in the meta that isn't Gastrodon, and Mandibuzz punishes Gastrodon really hard because it resists the Mud Slap. Mandibuzz is on Air Slash in this meta, and that is just because there is a lot of Darks floating around, so being able to hit neutrally against those Dark type Pokemon really does benefit it, and that's why you're running Foul Play and Aerial Ace now. Foul Play does have better pacing as well now, so also it doesn't hit as hard, but yeah. The next team we're going to look at is Shadow Annihilape Double Water. Azumarill, it should be pretty strong in this meta if it can avoid Toxapex. You are going to have issues with like some of the grass that we showcased earlier in some other teams, and then it has like a neutral-ish matchup into Jellicent, but it is going to lose there. So stuff like that. I don't expect you to see too much Lapras, but you've got two other answers to Lapras in the back. So yeah, it is going to run as your safe swap on this team, and then Lantern to punish any of the flyers that Annihilape might not like. And you have the Ice Beam coverage on Azumarill for those as well. Speaking of Jellicent, the next team we're going to look at is Jellicent Double Dragon. So because I already used Guzzlord, I wanted to use a new Double Dragon, and you'll notice that I'm not running Dragon Tail on the Como-O. I'm actually running Poison Jab, because if you switch in Como-O and you bait out Azumarill, suddenly you have super effective fast move pressure, and you can 2-shield through that Azumarill. And if they yeah, and Jellicent has a good match into Azumarill either way. Obviously, you're weak on the lead to Dark and Electric with Jellicent, and as well as Grass, and Como-O and Hakamo-O resist all three of those. So honestly, a really strong core here. I think it'll play better than the Sims, but yeah. The next team we're going to look at is XL Poniard with double Psychic Fighters in the back. Medicham as your safe swap because it's a little bulkier. There is an argument to be made that you could run Psychic on Medicham in this meta, especially because you don't want to be walled with your charge moves on Toxapex. That being said, Ice Punch does give you coverage for flyers, and Dynamic Punch is just your newest strong move, and you have straight 5 pacing to it, so it's pretty hard to want to give that up. But then you also have Poniard, which deals with pretty much all of the weaknesses of any fighter because it's a steel, so it'll resist the flying, it'll resist psychic, it won't resist fairy, but it neutralizes fairy because it's half dark. And then just Shadow Glade is your sweeper. It looks pretty strong in this meta, just really unique coverage with that Leaf Blade, and then Close Combat is just a hard-hitting closing move. The next thing we have is Triple Water. And it is Shadow Quagsire, Dugong, and Araquanid. Now, Araquanid kind of shows up pretty low, same with Dugong, but it actually sims really well against the meta. Remember, it's a Bug Bite user, so it's going to hit super effective against Darks, it's going to hit super effective against Psychics, it's just strong in a meta like this. However, if you're seeing mostly Toxapex and Fighters, I mean, Fighters is a neutral matchup, but yeah, then it's going to struggle a little bit, but it has good play into like Sableye, it's neutral into Morpeko. Gastrodon has a positive matchup because it resists the Mud Slaps. Mandibuzz is neutral, so like it's very strong neutrally, and I think it will get by. You'll notice that there's no hard wins or hard losses with this Pokemon, so. And then Dugong just kind of as your safe swap, dealing with the grass and the flyers that Quagsire doesn't really want to see. The next team is Malamar, Gyarados, and Volibee. Malamar is just kind of one of the ones that is a psychic dark. It gets in just with that dual typing. It's okay in this meta. It'll do decent into Toxapex. And you'll notice that this team doesn't look great against fairy as well, and that's because it doesn't matter. There's not really any fairies. Malamar also can 2 shield through his Azumarill. You can use both shields and actually win that matchup and come out with energy loaded. So it's actually not as bad as you might think. Gyarados, just to deal with the bugs, because it's, as a flyer, that Malamar is weak to. Same with Volibee. We'll deal with those bugs that Malamar is weak to. 2 flyers in the back. XL Volibee looks unbelievable the way it sims. I mean, it makes sense. It has a new cheaper foul play, and Brave Bird, which has great closing power. So put it in that closing position in the back. The next team we're going to look at is probably the most meta team that you could possibly run with the top 20 Pokemon. If you just want wins early on, I think this is the team you run if you have these 3 Pokemon. Gastrodon and Toxapex make nearly a perfect core against this meta. You notice that Gastrodon technically wins against all 3, which isn't really true. Obviously, Gastrodon into Gastrodon is a neutral matchup, and it comes down to a CMP tie. Sableye is a neutral matchup, and then obviously Toxapex, it's a hard loss. But yeah, so this team is unbelievably strong. It's a nearly perfect core with a basically perfect safe swap, with great coverage. So you're likely going to see this team everywhere. So don't be surprised by that. And then the last team that I want to showcase is one that I'm going to be using right out the gate. So if you stayed this far, congratulations. Because this is the team that I believe is going to core break the meta. Brionne. This Pokemon is the pre-evolution of Primarina, which means even though it's not a fairy water, it's just a mono water type, it still has access to Charm, and it has access to the newly buffed Aqua Jet. So this thing is going to be a beast. It's obviously going to struggle into something like Toxapex. But that's pretty much the only thing it's going to struggle against. Everything else is a neutral matchup. And hitting, like, it's going to hit super effective with the charms on literally pretty much everything in this meta. And then obviously Aqua Jet and Disarming Voice are great coverage. Sableye or Safe Swap to deal with Toxapex, basically because it's a poison resist and it's a great safe swap with fairy coverage. And then Hakamo in the back, because it resists the electric and grass, which is the only 2 weaknesses on Brionne. So I'm very excited to use this team in the Scroll Cup. I think it's going to be absolutely dominant, and I would definitely be showcasing it on this channel, so look forward to that. But yeah, that is 11 top teams for the Scroll Cup. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know how it goes with these teams, and let me know of any teams that you guys have any success with. But yeah, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.